NRL Supercoaches, welcome in to another fun video. I've separated all of the 17 squads into 4 categories, and it's all based on when they have their buys and their early schedules, basically, and what is going to be how many players you should probably select from each team, and which position is ideal for these types of players, just based on the amount that you can have in the position. You're looking at the hooking position, halfback and 5/8, and also fullback, who will just have 2 spots only. You know, if you're picking a player that has an early buy in those positions, it may cause you a few issues with having to trade or having to take a lower score in that position. So I have separated into 4 different squads and 4 different positions there, which we'll get into in 4 different videos. But firstly, we're going to be going through the Titans, the Storm, the Dragons, and the Cowboys. These 4 teams, they do have an early buy. So early buy meaning in that first sort of 7 or 8 rounds. And they do also miss the big buy round as well in round 12. So these 4 teams, they're Titans, Storm, and Dragons, have a buy in round 1, 2, and 3. Cowboys have it in round 7, and then they all have that buy in round 12. So I've clumped them all together just because they do miss 2 of that first 12, and it can become difficult to navigate your squad, especially in some of those tight positions that I mentioned with multiple players from these squads. So I have got in there that you should have anywhere between 1 to 2 max. And if you didn't have any from these teams, that would be completely fine as well. If you're looking at potentially using someone as a loop, then that's where the 1 works really well. And it also depends on if you are having a gun in that position or you are having a cash cow from one of these types of teams. And I just did a fantasy video yesterday on the Cowboys and just spoke about the potential for a couple of those cheapies to come through in Jackson Purdue, in Robert Darby, Tom Duffy, these types of players there. So if you were to have a couple of cheapies, then it'd be fine. But if you had that 1 gun, that could also be okay as well. But you don't want to overload in these types of spots, especially in the Titans, Storm, and Dragons, just because you do want to get off to a good start. And that can cause some issues there, obviously, with round 1, 2, and 3 having players from those teams and missing out on their scores if they're a gun, and missing out on their cash gen, or just getting yourself off on the right foot. I mentioned there with the center wing, we did have Bostock last year, had a buy in round 3, and he ended up being one of the really good cash cows. So it doesn't matter as much with some of the cheapies because they do have opportunities around that buy, and they're not taking up too much salary cap for good points in those first few weeks. So with those 4 teams there, I think it's just best to put them all together. And when we're saying 1 to 2 max, remember if you did have, a player, 2 players from each of these teams there, yes, you have some looping in the first few rounds, but you also are missing out on those points and potential for cash gains in those exact weeks. And a lot of time, you're buying players for sort of 4 or 5 week runs and stuff like that. So that just puts a little dent in that, and could be a reason why you might select one of the other groupings of teams with the buy schedule that they do have. It's just nice to, I think about it all and have it in your mind. So for the hooking position, I do think that picking a player from these teams, probably not super ideal. And I will go through the exact positions as we go along in further detail compared to the players I've got on my target list that I put out the other day. So make sure you go back and check those players that you want to have a look at, from the first video being hooker, front row forward, and second row forward, and then the second video being the halves and the backs. I just gave you an idea of players to potentially look at, and I'll go into further detail over the next couple of weeks with those positions. But in the hooking spot as well, I am going to go through each and every section there, and those 4 teams that we're going to look at first in the hooking slot there. So Harry Grant is someone that I have as a really high rated player, obviously being the best hooker in the game, averaging almost 71. He has a buy in round 2. So if you were to select him, you do need to have at least a decent bench option who you could start in that week, and then get Harry all the way through until Origin comes around. So yeah, he's just someone to note in that point. Then you do have the Dragons, like we said, missing in round 3, Cook and Little. In that one, Reece Robson's a little bit more interesting, given last year you got him all the way to Origin. This year you're getting him through to round 7, missing that week, and then missing from Origin again. So price-wise seems a decent spot, but outside that, might not be the best option, unfortunately. But that's what you've got there. Really, it's just those guys up top in that position that are going to be of a decent spot for you guys there. And with 2 spots only available in hooker, you do need to think about it if you are selecting someone from this position. When you have a look at the front row forward position, it's got 4 spots there, and that just allows there, I think it's, allows it to be fine, I think, to have the 1 out per week. If the player has, some type of value, you're selecting him for a clear reason. And that's where you look at someone like Tino with the dual position of 531. He does miss round 1, but he does have some value, and it's probably easier to just to own him from the start than to own him from, round 2, 3, or 4, something like that. Stefano could be an easy one to wait. If he doesn't, not sure if he has the clear value, has the buy in round 2, you could watch in round 1 and then make a decision in round 3 or 4 with someone like Stefano. Looking down the line, there's not a lot of high value guys in the front row forward position. So they're the 2 guys you might want to look at. And then you can get a job done out of someone like a McIntyre in that that lower price under 400k, and you're not looking at too many other great options from there. So it might just be one of those 2. Whereas I think Tino you could launch from the start, and someone like Stefano you could wait. And Jack de Belin's kind of in that middle ground, where nothing, he's not going to be too important, I don't think. For the second row forward guys, I really have no problem, because the position is so large, apart from sort of missing a couple of games in the first 12. If they've got the value, if they've got, if they're going to get the points for you, then I think it's not too big of an issue for, picking a couple of guys in these teams in 2RF. More for the fact that it does give you a looper in that slot, but you should have enough, given there's 3 bench spots and 3 starting spots, to get enough on the park. But this second row forward position holds a little bit more value in someone like Dave Fafita. I would suggest not starting with him with the buy round 1. Eli Katoa, same deal with round 2 buy. And then you go into guys like Jaden Sewer, missing round 3 there. Bo Fermor missing round 1. Cotter as well. Guys like Sean Bloor. I think you can just watch all of these guys. Cowboys are a little bit different with someone like John Bateman at 522. He provides a little bit of value similar to that of what Helam Lukey was going to, and has the buy in round 7, doesn't play Origin, a few good things with Johnny for sure. And then going down the line, again, just a few cheap guys that aren't too exciting unless they happen to get a starting spot, Ryan Couchman's, these types of players there in the second row forward position. Moving on to the halfback slot, and I just don't think it's super ideal as well, just the same as the hooking slots, just the same as the 5'8" slot, just for the fact that you do have the 2 players available to be able to be picked. And Jerome Hughes at 805k, I think it's tough to select him after a career year with the buy in round 2 for sure. Wishart, if we happen to get an injury in the halves, then he becomes more of an option. Jake Clifford at 533 did average a little bit higher than where he's priced at, but I do think he's someone that I think you can let go through the keeper at this point. If Tom Duffy got a spot, then he would slot in nicely in that secondary halfback position there for the Cowboys. We move on to the 5'8" position, and that's a position I mentioned again. You're in a situation where those guys are going to miss a couple of games through that time, and you've got a couple of interesting options, obviously in Tom Dearden, in Munster there, almost 600k. It's just the 2 slots. It's going to be hard to select guys other than them 2, I think. Potentially only Munster. I do think Dearden has a good year this year, but there aren't too many options there. You could look at a Kyle Flanagan as well in that slot. For the centre wing position, I have it very much the same as the second row forwards. It's fine for cheapies, like I said, with Bostock last year. And if there's a top tier gun that you just want to set and forget, then try not to stress too much about the buys. Because you do have someone like Val Holmes at the really high price of 784, but we know what we get out of him as a goal kicker in this league. Then you're going down the line a bit more, and you're looking more in the 500k marks. You've got Braden Burns with a lovely 71 average there if he got the wing spot, which I think he's a good chance of for sure. There's a few guys vying for that. That's for sure. If we saw Farlongo, come in, if Pap got an injury or something like that, then that could be the case there. But there's not too many guys in that section anyway that you probably want your pause on, apart from Jack Howarth at 426, potentially a Laybutt at 389 after with that big ton for game 1 last year. Jackson Polo is there as well, and Jackson Purdue if he ends up with that half spot, and Robert Derby. So there's just more of a few guys from the Cowboys, I think, in that scenario. And then to finish this off, the fullbacks. It's not ideal, obviously, having a buy early on from the high scoring position, Drinky, he seems semi-okay due to the round 7 bye and no origin, so you could just hold on strongly to him through that period at 770k with the goal kicking. He becomes of more interest. You've got Keeney, has the bye round 1. You don't want to start with that. Pap's probably the big one in this one at 616k, who has some value for sure on some of his best efforts, and if he manages to play anywhere up to that, like we saw near the final series and around that final series, and I think he has some value if you did want to go the cheaper route. But you probably in that case would want to go for 2 guns in that fullback slot, so that when Pat misses round 2, you're then fine from there on, fine for that week at getting a gun scorer, and he's at 616, not 800, so it feels a little bit better than if he was up at that 700-800k. And then Clint Gutho at 675 there, misses round 3, new club. Not sure how that would play out for him at this point, so I think you can let him go for now. Wait till he's a bit cheaper and make some decisions from there. So I just want to keep it really simple with these videos, just to get it clear in your head as to which players you might be looking at from certain teams, and just slowly start to build a structure around your squad and what you might want going forward. And the next video we will be going, for Supercoach, we'll be going through the Roosters, Panthers, Broncos, and Tigers. They have late buys there between sort of 12 and 15 as an example. They're too close together. So really good at the start, but could be tough through that middle period. So yeah, a collection of players from those teams is going to work out pretty well as well. So we'll get into that one next, and then we'll move into the other 2 options as well. Short and sweet, guys. Thanks so much for being here in the Supercoach video, and we'll catch you in the next one.